Welcome to Emma's English.
Hey English learners, welcome back to Emma's English Talk, your cozy little place to learn real everyday English through natural conversations. I'm Emma.
And I'm Tom. It is so wonderful to be here with you all today.
How are you doing today, Tom? Did you have a good evening yesterday?
I did, Emma, but I had a very funny experience when I was making dinner.
Oh, really? What did you make?
Well, I decided to cook some spaghetti because I wanted a quick and simple meal.
Spaghetti is always a great choice. It is fast, easy, and delicious.
That is true, but as always, I made a massive mistake with the amount.
Let me guess. You cooked enough pasta to feed a whole family.
Actually, it was probably enough to feed a small army.
That is so funny because that is exactly what we are talking about today.
Oh, really? We are talking about pasta?
Yes, specifically the struggle of cooking the right amount of pasta.
I am so glad we are discussing this because it happens to me every single time.
It is a universal human struggle, Tom. We call it the pasta portioning paradox.
The pasta portioning paradox? That sounds very scientific for a kitchen problem.
It does, but it just means that dry pasta looks very small, but it becomes huge when cooked.
Exactly. When it is dry in the box, it looks like it will not be enough.
So you add just a little bit more, and then suddenly you have a mountain of spaghetti.
That is precisely what happened to me last night.
Well, today we are going to explore why this happens to all of us.
And we will share some funny stories and helpful English phrases along the way.
This is going to be a very fun and relatable conversation.
I agree, and I think our listeners will really enjoy sharing their own experiences too.
Absolutely. So let us dive right into our main discussion about this kitchen mystery.
Let us do it. I am ready to talk about my massive bowl of leftovers.
I want to hear all about how you ended up with so much spaghetti, Tom.
It all started when I opened the cupboard and pulled out a brand new packet.
Did you use a measuring tool or did you just guess the amount?
You know me, Emma. I never use tools when I'm cooking pasta.
I think most people are the same way. We just trust our eyes.
Yes, but our eyes are clearly not very good at measuring dry food.
That is because pasta expands so much when it absorbs water.
It really does. It seems to double or even triple in size.
It does, and that is why we always get tricked by the visual size of the dry noodles.
I stared at the pot and thought, that looks like a very sad, small portion.
So you decided to throw in another handful just to be sure.
Yes, I grabbed another big handful and threw it right into the boiling water.
And that was the moment you sealed your fate, Tom.
It really was. Within 10 minutes, the pot was practically overflowing.
I have been there so many times, especially when cooking for friends.
It's even worse when you have guests because you do not want anyone to go hungry.
Exactly. The fear of not having enough food is very real.
So you always end up cooking way too much pasta.
And then you have to eat pasta for lunch and dinner for the next 3 days.
That is my life right now. I have spaghetti in containers everywhere.
Well, at least you don't have to worry about cooking for a while.
That is a positive way to look at it, Emma.
We always try to look at the bright side here on the show.
That is why I love hosting this podcast with you.
Let us talk about how we actually decide on the amount of pasta to throw in.
Usually I just open the package and pour some directly into the pot.
So you do not use a scale or any measuring cups at all?
No, never. I just eyeball it and hope for the best.
Eyeball it? Oh, you mean you just look at the food and guess the amount without using any tools to measure it?
Yes, exactly. Eyeballing it means estimating the amount visually instead of measuring it precisely.
I do that too, but I think it is the main reason we always make too much.
It is definitely the root of the problem. Our eyes just cannot estimate pasta correctly.
Especially with spaghetti, because the long, thin noodles lie so flat when they are dry.
Yes, they take up very little space in your hand, but they expand in every direction when they cook.
It is like a magic trick, but one that leaves you with way too many leftovers.
I remember one time I was cooking dinner for a first date.
Oh, this sounds like it could be a very interesting story.
I wanted to make a really nice pasta dish with fresh tomatoes and basil.
That sounds lovely and very romantic.
It was supposed to be, but I was so nervous about not having enough food.
So what did you do? Did you use the whole box?
I actually used 2 whole boxes of penne pasta because I got nervous.
2 boxes? That is an incredible amount of pasta for just 2 people.
I know, I definitely decided to go overboard because of my anxiety.
Go overboard? So you mean you did way too much of something and took it to an extreme?
Yes, exactly. To go overboard means to do something excessively or to exceed reasonable limits.
2 boxes of pasta for 2 people is definitely going overboard, Tom.
My date looked at the giant serving bowl and started laughing.
I do not blame her. Did you manage to eat even half of it?
Not even close. We barely finished a quarter of the bowl.
What happened to the rest of the penne?
I had to pack it into containers and eat it for the next 5 days.
Well, did you get a second date after that pasta mountain?
Surprisingly, yes. She said she liked a man who made sure there was plenty of food.
That is a very sweet way of looking at it. You found a good one.
I really did, but I learned my lesson about cooking pasta for guests.
It is funny how different types of pasta trick us in different ways.
What do you mean by that, Emma? Do different shapes behave differently?
Yes, absolutely. Think about short pastas like penne or fusilli.
They have a lot of air spaces between them in the box.
Exactly. They look like they take up a lot of space when they're dry.
So you might actually cook less of them because they look like a lot in the pot.
But spaghetti is the opposite because it's packed so tightly together.
That makes so much sense. Spaghetti has no air spaces between the noodles.
So a small bunch of dry spaghetti is actually a massive amount of food.
I never thought about the physics of pasta shapes before, but you're totally right.
It's all about how much space they occupy and how they absorb the water.
What about macaroni? That's another shape that seems to grow incredibly fast.
Macaroni is a classic example. When it's dry, the little elbows are tiny.
But once they boil, they swell up and become quite plump.
I once tried to make a single serving of macaroni and cheese.
Let me guess, you ended up with a giant pot of mac and cheese.
I did. I thought a half cup of dry macaroni looked like nothing.
So you added another cup, didn't you?
Of course I did. And then I had to use a giant amount of cheese sauce to cover it all.
That sounds like a delicious problem to have, actually.
It was delicious for the first bowl, but by the third day, I was so tired of cheese.
I cannot imagine getting tired of cheese, but I understand the feeling.
It's just that eating the same thing over and over can get a bit boring.
That's the real danger of the pasta portioning paradox.
It really is. It turns a quick, fresh meal into a multi-day commitment.
Do you think there's a psychological reason why we're so afraid of cooking too little?
I think so. Food is closely tied to hospitality and comfort.
Yes, we want our guests, or even ourselves, to feel completely satisfied.
No one wants to finish their dinner and still feel hungry.
That's a very uncomfortable feeling, especially if you're hosting a party.
It's considered polite in many cultures to have food left over at the end of a meal.
That's true. It shows that the host was very generous.
But when it's just you cooking for yourself on a Tuesday night, it's not necessary.
No, on a Tuesday night, you just want one clean plate and no leftovers.
Exactly. You don't want to deal with washing extra storage containers.
Or trying to fit giant bowls into a crowded refrigerator.
That's another struggle. My fridge is often just a storage unit for leftover pasta.
I have 3 different containers of spaghetti in my fridge right now.
Are they all from last night, or are some of them older?
They're all from last night. I made that much pasta, Emma.
Emma, that's incredible. You really need to find a better way to measure.
I know. I really need some help with my kitchen skills.
Do you ever use a kitchen scale to weigh your food?
I have a scale, but it's stored in the back of a very high cabinet.
So it's too much effort to pull it out every time you want to cook.
Exactly. It's much easier to just grab the box and pour.
I think convenience often wins over accuracy in the kitchen.
It definitely does for me. I just want to get the food in the pot as fast as possible.
And that's when the eyeballing mistakes happen.
Yes, we pay the price later when we're washing all those dishes.
I also find that the size of the pot makes a difference.
Really? How does the pot size affect how much you cook?
Well, if you use a very large pot, a small amount of dry pasta looks completely lost inside it.
Ah, that makes sense. You see all that empty water and think you need more.
Exactly. So you add more to make it look proportional to the pot.
But if you use a smaller pot, it looks like a lot more food from the start.
Yes, but then you run into the problem of the water boiling over.
Oh, that's another classic kitchen disaster.
Starchy pasta water boiling over and making a mess on the stove is the worst.
It's so hard to clean up once it dries and burns onto the metal.
It really is. It creates a sticky white crust that requires a lot of scrubbing.
So to avoid that, we use a big pot, which then tricks us into cooking too much pasta.
It's a vicious cycle, Tom. There is no easy escape.
It seems like the universe wants us to eat too much pasta.
Maybe it's not the worst fate in the world, though.
No, it could be much worse. Pasta is still incredibly delicious.
It is very comforting, especially on a cold or rainy evening.
It's the ultimate comfort food for a reason.
Let's talk about what we do with those leftovers when we make too much pasta.
Usually I just reheat them in the microwave the next day.
Reheated pasta can be okay, but sometimes it gets very dry.
That's true. It loses that nice texture it had when it was fresh.
Do you ever add a splash of water or some extra olive oil before reheating?
Yes, I usually have to add a bit of water to keep it from turning into a brick.
A brick of pasta is definitely not very appetizing.
No, it's not. It becomes one solid mass of noodles.
That's because the starch continues to absorb any moisture even after it's cooked.
That explains why the sauce seems to disappear overnight.
Exactly. The noodles just drink up all the sauce while they sit in the fridge.
So when you take it out the next day, it's dry and clumped together.
That's why some people prefer to store the pasta and the sauce separately.
That's a very smart strategy, but it requires using two different containers.
It does, and again, we're talking about extra dishwashing.
I think I'm just too lazy for that level of kitchen organization.
Many people are, Tom. We just want to throw everything into one bowl and be done with it.
It's all about minimizing the cleanup time after dinner.
But then we suffer the next day with dry, sticky leftovers.
It's a trade-off for sure.
Have you ever tried to transform your leftover pasta into a completely new dish?
I have tried making a pasta bake once or twice.
A pasta bake is a fantastic way to rescue dry noodles.
Yes, you just add some extra cheese and sauce and bake it in the oven.
It makes the top nice and crispy, which hides any texture issues.
That's a very clever trick. I should do that with my leftovers tonight.
You should. It will make your second day of spaghetti much more exciting.
I think I have some mozzarella cheese in the fridge that would be perfect for that.
There you go. You're turning a mistake into a culinary masterpiece.
Or at least a very cheesy mistake.
Cheesy mistakes are the best kind of mistakes, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more, Emma.
What about cold pasta salads? Do you ever make those?
I love pasta salads in the summer, but not with spaghetti.
No, spaghetti is not great for cold salads. You need short shapes for that.
Yes, fusilli or penne work much better with a cold vinaigrette.
It's funny how the shape of the pasta completely dictates how we eat it.
It really does. You'd never eat spaghetti with a spoon and a knife.
Well, some people use a spoon to help them twirl the spaghetti.
That's true, but that's a very specific technique.
I actually read that in Italy, using a spoon to eat spaghetti is considered bad manners.
Really? I didn't know that.
Let us shift our focus to some of the methods people use to prevent cooking too much.
I know some people use those plastic tools with different sized holes in them.
Yes, those are called spaghetti measurers. Each hole represents a number of servings.
I actually bought one of those a few years ago, but it just sits in my drawer.
Why do you not use it? Is it hard to use?
No, it is just that when I am hungry, I do not want to spend time threading dry pasta through a plastic hole.
I understand. It feels like an extra step that delays your dinner.
Exactly. And also, those holes seem very small to me.
They do look small. The hole for one person looks like it would only feed a toddler.
Yes, I look at that tiny bundle of spaghetti and think there is no way that is enough.
But that is the visual illusion we talked about. It really is a full serving.
I suppose the manufacturers actually tested it, so they must know what they're doing?
They do, but our hungry brains always think they're trying to starve us.
That is so true. Our brains are not very objective when we are hungry.
Is there any other rule of thumb you have heard of for measuring pasta?
A rule of thumb, so that is like a general practical guideline that people follow, even if it is not an exact scientific rule?
Exactly, Tom. A rule of thumb is a simple, practical principle based on experience, rather than precise measurements.
Well, one common rule of thumb for spaghetti is that a single serving should be the same diameter as a small coin.
Like a quarter or a €1 coin.
Yes, you hold the dry spaghetti in a bundle, and the circle should match the size of the coin.
That is a very popular one, but again, it requires you to be quite precise with your hands.
It does, and my hands are usually too busy holding the pot lid or opening the sauce jar.
I have also heard of using the plastic bottle cap trick.
Oh, what is that? How does a bottle cap help you measure pasta?
Apparently, the opening of a standard plastic soda bottle is the exact size of one serving of spaghetti.
That is incredibly convenient because almost everyone has a plastic bottle around.
It is. But I tried it once and I still felt like the portion was too small.
So what did you do? Did you add a little bit more?
Yes, I added just a small pinch more to be on the safe side.
To be on the safe side. That means choosing the option that avoids any risk or mistake, just in case. Correct?
Yes, precisely. To be on the safe side means to take extra precautions to avoid any potential problems or disappointments later.
I think that is why we all end up with giant portions. We always want to be on the safe side.
We do. We would rather have too much than too little.
It is a very natural human instinct to want abundance when it comes to food.
It is, but it does lead to a lot of waste if we do not eat the leftovers.
That is the sad part of this whole paradox. Sometimes the food gets thrown away.
Fortunately, pasta is relatively inexpensive, but it is still not good to waste food.
No, it is always better to finish what we cook or at least share it.
Sharing is a great option. If you cook too much, you can always invite a neighbor over.
That sounds like a wonderful way to build a community.
It does, although my neighbors might get tired of me knocking on their door with bowls of spaghetti.
Hello, it's me again with more pasta. Please help me eat it.
That would make a very funny comedy sketch.
It really would. The neighborhood pasta lady.
I think I could accept that title. It's not the worst thing to be known for.
No, people would definitely love you for it. Free food is always welcome.
Especially free pasta. It is so universally loved.
It is hard to find someone who does not like pasta at all.
Even people who are on low-carb diets often miss pasta the most.
Yes, it's the one thing they always say they crave.
There are some alternative pastas now, like those made from chickpeas or lentils.
Have you tried those? Do they taste the same?
They're actually quite good, but they have a slightly different texture.
Do they expand the same way as regular wheat pasta?
No, they actually don't expand as much, and the water gets very foamy.
The foam can cause even more boiling over disasters.
It really does. You have to watch chickpea pasta very closely.
So it requires even more attention than regular spaghetti?
Yes, you can't just walk away and check your phone.
That is another thing. I often get distracted while the pasta is boiling.
I think we all do. 10 minutes feels like a long time when you're just standing in the kitchen.
So you wander off to do something else, and then you forget about the time.
And then the pasta becomes overcooked and mushy.
That is a terrible texture for pasta. It should be al dente.
Yes, al dente means it still has a bit of firmness when you bite into it.
It's the perfect texture, but it's very easy to miss that window.
Just 1 extra minute of boiling can turn perfect pasta into mush.
So you have to be very precise with the cooking time as well as the portion size.
Cooking truly is an art and a science, Tom.
It really is, and I think I am failing at both parts when it comes to pasta.
Don't be so hard on yourself. We're all learning.
That is true. Every cooking failure is just a lesson for next time.
Exactly. And next time, you might actually use that measuring tool in your drawer.
I might, but I can't make any promises.
Old habits die hard, as they say.
They really do. It's hard to change the way you've been doing things for years.
I think we get comfortable with our routines, even if they aren't perfect.
Yes, there is a certain comfort in the chaos of eyeballing it.
It makes the kitchen feel more creative and less like a laboratory.
Exactly. I like to feel like a chef, even if I am just making basic spaghetti.
A true chef doesn't need tools, they just feel the food.
Yes, that is my excuse. I'm just cooking with passion.
Passion and a massive amount of dry noodles.
Exactly. That is my signature style.
I think it's a very popular style around the world.
I'm glad to know I'm not alone in this.
You are definitely not alone. Millions of people are looking at their giant piles of leftover pasta right now.
It's a global community of overcookers.
We should start a club for people who always cook too much pasta.
We could call it the Overportioners Anonymous?
That is a brilliant name. Our first meeting would have a massive buffet.
Yes, because everyone would bring their leftovers.
That would be a very successful meeting, actually.
It really would. We could solve world hunger with our leftover spaghetti.
If only we could transport it easily.
Yes, cold spaghetti does not travel very well.
No, it turns into a giant clump during the journey.
That is the main limitation of our plan.
Well, it was a nice dream while it lasted.
We can still dream, Tom. That is what keeps us going.
Indeed, and in the meantime, I will just keep eating my leftovers.
I hope you have some good sauce to go with it.
I actually made a fresh batch of marinara sauce, so it's not too bad.
Marinara sauce is very classic and delicious.
Yes, it has lots of garlic and basil.
Garlic makes everything better in the kitchen.
I agree. I'd probably go overboard with the garlic, but that's a good thing.
There is no such thing as too much garlic, in my opinion.
I am so glad we agree on that. It is a fundamental rule of cooking.
Yes, garlic is the soul of Italian food.
And pasta is the body.
That is a very beautiful way to put it, Emma.
Thank you. I get poetic when I talk about food.
Food has that effect on people. It brings out our emotions.
It really does. It's connected to so many of our memories.
Yes, like family dinners or meals with friends.
And even those silly kitchen mistakes we make.
Those are often the things we remember the most.
Like your date with the 2 boxes of pasta?
Yes, we still laugh about that story today.
It's a great memory to look back on.
It really is, and it makes the pasta taste even better.
I think sharing food memories is just as important as sharing the food itself.
I agree completely. It connects us to each other.
That's why I love talking about these simple daily topics on our podcast.
Me too. They are things that everyone can relate to.
No matter where you are in the world, you have probably cooked too much pasta.
Yes, it's a universal experience.
And it's a great way to practice English because the vocabulary is so practical.
Yes, these are words and phrases you can use every day.
Whether you're talking about cooking or other parts of your life.
That's the beauty of learning conversational English.
It's all about communication and connection.
And having a good laugh about our daily struggles.
Exactly. We should never take ourselves too seriously.
Especially in the kitchen.
Definitely not. The kitchen is a place for fun and experimentation.
And occasionally, a mountain of spaghetti.
Thinking about our habits in the kitchen made me realize that we often do things without thinking.
Yes, we just fall into these patterns because they are easy.
Exactly. We choose the easiest option by default.
By default? So you mean it happens automatically because you did not make a conscious alternative choice?
Yes, that is right. Doing something by default means it is the automatic choice or the standard setting when no other option is selected.
That is so true for my cooking habits. I just grab the pot and pour by default.
We all have those default settings in our daily lives that we do not even question.
But when we actually stop to think about them, we can find ways to improve.
Or at least we can understand why we keep making the same mistakes.
Like when I get excited about a meal and want to cook up a storm.
Cook up a storm? That is such a great idiom for when someone cooks a huge amount of food with lots of energy, isn't it?
Yes, it is. To cook up a storm means to cook a large amount of food with a lot of enthusiasm and activity.
It sounds very exciting and energetic.
It is, but it also usually results in a very messy kitchen.
That is the trade-off. A messy kitchen is the sign of a meal cooked with passion.
That is what I always tell myself when I am cleaning up the flour and sauce.
It is a good excuse to have.
I think my kitchen looks like a storm actually hit it after I am done.
That is probably why they call it cooking up a storm.
That makes a lot of sense. The aftermath is definitely storm-like.
But the food is always worth it.
Yes, the final result is what matters.
These two phrases are so useful for our listeners.
They really are. They help you express these common daily situations so naturally.
Instead of saying, I did it automatically, you can say, I did it by default.
And instead of saying, I cooked a lot of food, you can say, I cooked up a storm.
It makes your English sound so much more colorful and natural.
That is what we're aiming for here on the show. We want our listeners to feel confident using these natural expressions.
It really helps them sound more like native speakers.
It does, and it makes conversations much more enjoyable.
I love learning new idioms in other languages too.
It gives you a deeper insight into the culture.
Yes, because idioms reflect how people think and see the world.
And in English, we have so many idioms related to food and cooking.
That shows how much we love food. Food is a central part of every culture.
It is the ultimate connector.
It really is, and I'm glad we can share these food conversations with our listeners.
Me too, Emma. It is always the highlight of my week.
Speaking of remembering all these natural expressions, it can be a lot to take in just by listening.
Yes, sometimes you need to see the words written down to really understand them.
That is why we have a completely free PDF script available for today's episode.
Oh, that is fantastic. Where can our listeners find that script?
It is in the description below, and we also pinned the link in the comment section.
That is so convenient. They can read along while they listen to our voices.
It is perfect for practicing your pronunciation and shadowing our conversation.
I highly recommend downloading it if you want to take your English to the next level.
And if you are enjoying this episode, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel.
Yes, subscribing is the best way to support us and make sure you never miss a lesson.
Just hit that red button and turn on the notification bell.
That way you will get notified every time we release a new episode.
We really appreciate all of your support. It helps us keep creating these lessons.
It really does. We love seeing our global community of English learners grow.
Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed and left lovely comments.
Yes, your kind words always make our day.
All right, and speaking of reviewing, before we say goodbye today, let us do a quick review of our 6 target expressions.
That is a great idea. I need a quick recap myself after all this talk about pasta.
Our first phrase was eyeball it, which means to estimate something visually without measuring precisely.
Like when I eyeball the amount of dry spaghetti to cook.
Exactly. And our second phrase was go overboard, which means to do too much of something or exceed reasonable limits.
Which is what I did when I cooked 2 whole boxes of pasta for a first date.
That is still the funniest story. Our third phrase was rule of thumb, which is a general, practical guideline based on experience.
Like the rule of thumb that a serving of spaghetti should match the size of a coin.
Yes, and our fourth phrase was on the safe side, which means taking extra precautions to avoid risk or error.
Like adding just a little bit more pasta to the pot to be on the safe side.
Our fifth phrase was by default, which means something happens automatically when no other choice is made.
Like how I choose the easiest kitchen habits by default.
And finally, our sixth phrase was cook up a storm, which means to cook a large amount of food with great energy.
Which is what I love to do on weekends when I have plenty of time.
Those are 6 incredibly useful and natural phrases for everyday English.
I hope our listeners can try using them in their next English conversation.
I am sure they will do a wonderful job with them.
Practice makes perfect, after all.
It really does. Just try to use one of them today.
Even if it is just in your own head while you are cooking dinner.
That is a great way to practice.
Well, Emma, this has been a very fun and delicious conversation.
It really has. It has made me a little bit hungry, to be honest.
Me too. I think I know what I'm having for lunch today.
Let me guess. Leftover spaghetti?
You guessed it. I have to finish those 3 containers.
Good luck with that, Tom. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Emma. I am sure I will.
Before we sign off, we want to hear from our wonderful listeners.
Yes, we have a very important question for you today.
How do you measure your pasta? Or do you also end up with a mountain of leftovers? Do you eyeball it, use a scale, or do you have your own special rule of thumb?
Let us know in the comments below. We really want to read your answers.
Yes, hearing your stories is our favorite part of doing the show. It is so interesting to see how people from different countries handle these daily struggles.
So please type your response in the comments and let us start a conversation.
We promise to read them all and reply to as many as we can.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
We hope you had fun and learned some useful English.
Keep practicing and keep cooking up a storm.
Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Goodbye and happy learning.
Bye-bye, everyone. See you next time.
See you soon.